Protests supporting Palestine action have led to more than 200 arrests across the UK in the last few days, with demonstrators holding placards today, at least 100 arrests today, saying, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action." There are issues about this, and I'll get to these. The philosophical issue, but I think most importantly, the impressive numbers of people who are sitting there defying the law because they think it's wrong. The protests organised by Defend Our Juries have taken place despite the UK's government's prescription of Palestine action, the group, under the Terrorism Act of 2000. And the group was banned following accusations of criminal damage and violent activities, including an attack on RAF Briars Norton. The protesters argue that their actions are in support of Palestinian rights, but they face charges for showing support, effectively, for a prescribed organisation. However, the issue at hand is more complex than a simple binary of supporting Palestine or opposing genocide. The logic behind the protest, the group's objectives, and the government's stance on terrorism laws all intertwine to raise significant questions about free expression, the right to protest, and the complex nature of legal interpretation. The arrests stem from the legal reality that under the Terrorism Act, supporting a prescribed group is a criminal offence, punishable by up to 14 years in prison. This has led to the arrest of 80-year-old people. There's one today. Palestine Action is a specific group, has been accused of using violent and disruptive tactics to push its goals, including vandalism and targeting Israeli-linked businesses. Yet these actions are often conflated with general moral support for the Palestinian cause, and protesters who oppose genocide and support Palestinian rights find themselves arrested for showing support for Palestine action despite their peaceful protest. While protesting for Palestinian rights is a legally protected act, showing support for Palestine action, the group, is a criminal offence. Very confusing. The challenge here lies in how to differentiate between supporting a cause and endorsing a group that is engaged in violent actions. And the real philosophical and logical challenge is the potential inconsistency in the protesters' position. When someone says, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action," they are linking two distinct ideas: opposition to genocide, a moral stance, and support for a group with a controversial history of action. But also, with the same linguistic term, is support for the Palestinians, not an outlawed group, but a group being savaged by the Israeli army under the control of Netanyahu. And there are several potential logical fallacies. The first one, of course, is equivocation. This fallacy arrives if Palestine action is used to refer to two distinct things: the broader moral cause of supporting Palestinian rights and the specific activities of the group that has been designated as a terrorist organisation. Then the statement, "I support Palestine action," could be interpreted in a way that muddles the distinction between moral support for the Palestinian cause and legal support for the prescribed group. And there is inconsistency or self-contradiction. So if one truly opposes genocide, supporting a group that engages in violent actions would be contradictory unless that group's goals are entirely consistent with a non-violent stance. So the mistake is assuming that supporting Palestine action's cause in a humanitarian sense automatically aligns with the group's methods, which may, in some interpretations, contribute to violence. So if you state, "I oppose genocide in all its forms," and also support an organisation that advocates for actions that might exacerbate violence or conflict, this leads to an inherent contradiction. The group's activities, such as vandalism or violence, could undermine the moral stance of opposing genocide. The tension here lies in the assumption that supporting the cause is synonymous with supporting the methods of a specific group. From a deeper philosophical perspective, one could argue that opposition to genocide is a universal moral position, and it need not translate into support for any specific political or activist group. The group Palestine Action has engaged in tactics that, depending on one's view, could be considered acts of terrorism or necessary civil disobedience. The group's actions, such as attacking RAF Briars Norton, aim to disrupt operations linked to Israel's military, but also implicate broader questions about the ethics of direct action. While many of the protesters are motivated by a moral opposition to genocide, as well as the inhumane treatment of Palestinians, the endorsement of violent methods complicates the moral calculus. And the law in this context may seem, I think, an outdated and overreaching mechanism that doesn't differentiate between peaceful moral opposition and explicit support of criminal acts. A skilled lawyer could argue that the law's broad application in this case is unjust, as it criminalises support for an ideological stance opposing genocide, rather than objectively distinguishing between legitimate protest and illegal activities. And the real question here is whether the law should be applied strictly to criminal activities or more flexibly to protect peaceful political expression, even if that expression is linked to a banned group. While the police's duty is to enforce the law, their role in preventing peaceful protests could be seen as infringing upon basic democratic rights. And of course, it's up to each individual policeman to decide whether or not they're going to arrest somebody when the time comes. The bigger question concerns the intersection of moral restrictions, freedom of speech, and moral activism. Protesters are not necessarily endorsing the group's violent actions. Many view the act of supporting Palestine action as a moral stance, drawing a line against the genocide of Palestinians. And the protesters are engaging in civil disobedience to stand in solidarity with Palestinians, yet they are being punished for expressing this solidarity in a manner linked to a group that is now being criminalised. The arrests in Westminster raise critical questions about the relationship between moral opposition to genocide, legal restrictions on activism, and the nature of protest movements. Philosophically and logically, supporting Palestine action as a cause may not necessarily mean endorsing the group's methods or actions. Full stop. The failure to distinguish between moral opposition to genocide and support for a criminal organisation introduces a level of logical confusion, and the law in this case could be seen as disproportionately penalising those who are exercising their democratic right to protest. Ultimately, the situation underscores a complex tension between legal frameworks, the right to protest, and the ethical boundaries of political activism. And put bluntly, I think Yvette Cooper's decision to prescribe Palestine action was taken hastily. The law may be functioning in its technical capacity, but in doing so it risks undermining the very democratic principles it seeks to protect, and it cheapens the use of this law when it's really needed.